But the story didn't end there. One evening, Ethan asked gently, "Do you ever want to see your family again?" Walter's face tightened. My boy. He must be in his 40s now. Last I heard, he moved to Ohio. I doubt he wants anything to do with me. Still, Ethan wouldn't let go. With his parents' help, he searched. Weeks later, they found a number. Walter's hands shook as he dialed. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then a voice answered, uncertain. "Dad?" The silence that followed carried years of pain, regret, and longing. But slowly, words filled the gap. Conversations turned into visits. And one winter morning, Walter's son came to New York, hugging the father he thought he had lost forever. The veteran stands tall again. Months passed. Walter no longer sat at the corner with the flag. He walked taller now, his beard trimmed, his jacket replaced by one given by the local Veterans Association. He still carried the flag, but now it was not as a reminder of loss, it was a symbol of hope. At community events, people asked him to speak. Schools invited him to share stories of courage and sacrifice. And every time he told his tale, he pointed to Ethan in the crowd. "This boy," Walter would say, voice breaking, "reminded me I was not invisible." Legacy of a small act. New York kept rushing, of course. The traffic never slowed, the crowds never stopped. But somewhere among the noise, an old man's story lived on, because one boy had paused long enough to see him. And for Walter, that pause was everything. The next day, Ethan came again. This time he brought an apple and a bottle of water. They talked. Ethan learned Walter had served in the Gulf War, had once been a sergeant who led men younger than himself into danger. He learned Walter had lost his best friend overseas, had returned to find his own family gone, a wife who couldn't bear the weight of his nightmares, a son he hadn't spoken to in decades. Sometimes, Walter said, staring at the flag, "I wonder if it was worth it. Not the fight, not the cause, but the way it all ended. We give everything, and then, we disappear." Ethan didn't know what to say. He was just a kid. But he listened. And sometimes, that was enough. A week later, a young woman who saw Ethan talking with Walter stopped and asked if she could help. She bought him coffee. Another man, noticing, offered him a blanket. Slowly, day by day, the city began to notice what had been invisible. A veteran was no longer alone. The story spreads. One afternoon, a journalist walking by snapped a photo, a teenage boy handing food to an old soldier with tears in his eyes. The image spread across social media, captioned, "Heroes should not be forgotten." Within days, people from across the neighborhood began visiting Walter. Some brought food, others money, some just words of gratitude. A local charity offered him a room in a veteran shelter. But more than material help, Walter felt something he hadn't in years, dignity. For the first time in decades, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. On a chilly autumn afternoon, as orange leaves swirled along the pavement, a boy named Ethan Miller walked home from school. He was 15, his backpack heavy with textbooks, his mind buzzing with algebra homework and basketball practice. As he approached the intersection, his eyes caught the old veteran sitting by the light. Walter sat hunched, lips pressed tight, eyes distant. He looked like someone waiting for something that would never come. Ethan slowed. People brushed past him, annoyed at his hesitation. But Ethan kept staring. Something inside him whispered, "Stop." He reached into his bag, pulled out a sandwich his mom had packed, and crouched beside the old man. "Sir," Ethan said softly, "thank you for your service." Walter blinked, startled. No one had said those words to him in years. His throat tightened. "Son. You don't have to." "I want to," Ethan interrupted, placing the sandwich in Walter's trembling hands. The old man's eyes brimmed with tears. He had faced fire, bombs, and death without crying. But the kindness of a boy on a New York sidewalk broke through walls years of silence had built. "God bless you, kid," Walter whispered. The late afternoon sun spilled gold across the towering glass and steel of Manhattan. Cars honked impatiently, yellow cabs swerved, and people hurried with their coffee cups and phones clutched tight. On the corner of 42nd Street, tucked near a traffic light, sat an old man with a worn-out cap and a faded army jacket. His beard was rough, his hands calloused, and in his palm rested a tiny American flag. His name was Walter Hayes, though most passers-by never knew. To them, he was just another shadow among the countless faces of New York's streets, a man who had become invisible in the very city he once swore to protect. Years ago, Walter had been a soldier. He had marched through deserts, endured freezing nights in foreign lands, carried brothers in arms through gunfire, and survived explosions that still echoed in his dreams. The medals he once received lay tucked away in a rusted box, forgotten in a shelter locker he no longer visited. What he had left was the flag, small, frayed, and stubbornly clutched like a lifeline. People hurried past him every day. Some glanced, most ignored. A few dropped spare change, not out of kindness, but more out of guilt. Walter never asked for much. He only wanted to be remembered, not as a beggar on a sidewalk, but as someone who once carried a rifle so others could carry their freedoms.